And Amy, so developments in Charlotte and Tulsa yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Tulsa Officer Betty Shelby charged with manslaughter. Quick charges filed by the state's attorney in Tulsa County, Oklahoma. And in Charlotte, the family and their attorney got to see the dash cam video that involved the shooting death of Mr. Scott. And there's still a dispute over what they saw in that video.
Yeah, they say they do not believe he was holding a weapon. So we still have this conflicting narratives. Or was it a book? Was it a gun?
Well, the family did not cling to he was holding a book. They didn't.
Well, they dropped that, but they said they still have not dropped that. They said his hands were by his side and he was walking backwards slowly from the officer when those 4 fatal shots were fired.
A lot of this is this talk of whether he had a gun, whether he had a book. I know, and those who have been involved in these situations deeply understand the fact that for every person that may have seen something, they're going to have their own viewpoint. That's why we come in and we're not throwing out accusations. We just want to know the facts.
And that's the family's attorney.
And that's not true. They have been throwing out accusations. That's absolutely not true. And Kerr Putney, the police chief, Charlotte Mecklenburg, has suggested what they found. And then a former police union head.
Yeah, the Charlotte FOP spokesman, Todd Water, he said, too, that he saw the same tape and he saw a weapon.
Right. And they had said previously that if there was a weapon there, the weapon that was recovered, according to the police chief, that it was planted. That's what we call an accusation. So let's just break down some of the lawyer spin that we're getting as we try and find out what the actual facts are in this case. For more on the cultural and political impact, with just a few days before the first presidential debate and the law enforcement to sure to be a topic, we're now happy to be joined by our soul brother in sound. He is perhaps
yes,
Amy Jacobson's future stepfather, because Amy Jacobson's mom has a crush on him, as do I. My crush is intellectual, though.
Oh, okay.
I like him for his mind, not for his tall, dark, and handsomeness. He is the sage of South Central. He is Larry Elder, host of the Larry Elder Show, which you can hear in L.A., 8 p.m. to 11 p.m. Central Time on KRLA. And you can stream here 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. Chicago time. Larry Elder, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, Dan. I got some bad news for you. I am heterosexual.
Oh, I said,
yeah.
I said for your mind, I want an intellectual relationship with you only.
Yeah, well, Amy's mom's a different situation.
Yeah, hands off, Dan.
Right.
I am, in fact, heterosexual.
I can't compete with a tall Swedish woman. I concede the point. So your reaction to what you've seen over the last several days in both Tulsa and Charlotte, culminating in particular with the charging of Officer Betty Shelby in Tulsa with manslaughter?
Well, there's so much there. My first reaction is, here we go again. This incessant assertion that somehow black people are under siege by the cops. It is rare for the police to shoot anybody, let alone a black person, let alone an unarmed black person. According to the Washington Post last year, 965 people were killed by the cops. 500 of them were white. 250 of them were black. Less than 4% were a white officer killing an unarmed black man. By contrast, in Chicago alone, where you guys are on track for 700 homicides. Chicago is a third black, a third white, a third Hispanic. About 70% of these homicides are black on black, and 75% of them are unsolved. Let's just get the facts before we react.
Well, do you think
Charlotte,
justice...
you have a black officer who killed the suspect. The PD chief is black. The Attorney General, Loretta Lynch, is our second consecutive back-to-back black AG. Obama is black, yet people still aren't willing to let the investigation continue before they react. It is absurd. Reminds me of Baltimore. Mayor black, the city council, all Democrats, majority black. The first two heads of the police department at the time were black. The majority of the command staff is black. The state attorney is black, and still people are rioting. If you're talking about institutional racism, how can it be institutional racism when blacks are running the institution? Come on.
Well, do you think the Officer Betty Shelby getting charged, that justice now has been served?
Well, first of all, wasn't that pretty fast? I mean, they're still investigating Benghazi. It's amazing to me how quickly the charges were made. I saw the tape. You guys saw the tape. It's ambiguous. Once again, I'm telling you, when this thing comes to trial, this woman's not going to be convicted, and then maybe we're going to have another riot. This reminds me of the 6 officers that were charged against Freddie Gray. When those charges were brought down, I said on the air, I will tell you, nobody's going to be convicted. They had 4 trials, failed to get any kind of conviction, and now they dropped the charges against the other 2. That's going to happen again here.
Yeah,
He's
I
going
agree.
to say, I had reasonable fear of my life, and all you do is look at what the officer thought at the time and whether or not her fears are reasonable. They're going to be deemed to be reasonable. She's going to walk.
You know what? One of the other things, I'm sure you've covered this as well, being on top of it as you are, but it's just the lack of making distinctions where distinctions need to be made. So what appears to have been the case in Charlotte, if what the police chief says is true, turns out to be true, and I have no reason not to believe him, versus what happened in Tulsa, those are the completely different fact patterns, completely different circumstances. They should be treated as such. The response in Tulsa,
they prayed.
Of prayerful reflection on the topic and discussion, and the response in Charlotte, they're treated as, well, this is just a response. This is all under the category of protesting. So, cracking up the Charlotte Hornets team store is the same thing as thoughtfully praying. And all of those distinctions by both the Beltway media as well as racial demagogues, including the Democrat nominee for president, those distinctions are completely blurred, and I think it does a disservice to any productive conversation.
I couldn't agree more, but Dan, you're implying that facts matter. They don't matter. The grand jury in the case of Ferguson completely exonerated Officer Darren Wilson, as did the DOJ. Michael Brown didn't have his hands up, didn't say don't shoot. The facts show he was charging the officer. His DNA is on the officer's gun, and still you have people in the streets going, hands up, don't shoot. Facts don't matter. In fact, facts are racist.
Wow.
And what do you want to hear from, just switching gears for the debate, because this will certainly be a topic for the debate. What do you want to hear from Trump if you were advising him? What's the tone and tenor he should take? What are the issues he needs to effectively prosecute on Monday night?
Well, what I would say to him versus what he ought to do politically are 2 very different things. What I say to him privately is, whatever happens to comply, you won't die. In every one of these cases, including the egregious one, the most egregious one, Walter Scott being shot in the back, had the suspect complied, he or she would not have died. That does not excuse the officer's behavior, but whatever happens to comply, you won't die. These situations have been escalated by the failure of these mostly young black men to simply comply with a lawful order. Now, what he ought to say politically is we can't have violence like this. We need to make sure that the police are out there, and the majority of the people in the community are law-abiding and are not taken to the streets. And the demonization of these officers, if I were Donald Trump, I'd say, is causing officers to pull back. As a result, you're finding greater violence in 25 of the 100 largest cities, including Baltimore, including Chicago, including St. Louis. So the Black Lives Matter people are, in fact, causing greater harm and causing fellow black people to be harmed. Maybe something like that you'd get away with. But I just had it. It's absurd. 400 people last year were struck by lightning in America. If the media covered people being struck by lightning as often as they do a black person being killed by the police, we wouldn't leave our houses in the rain.
And how do you expect Hillary Clinton to respond to the same subject matter?
Oh, the same way she always has. The police are going to be thrown under the bus. She's already written them off. She knows she's not going to get the law and order vote, and so she needs to have that 95% monolithic black vote without which she can't win. And the way to do that is to scream racism, racism, racism. It's all about social justice. Never mind the fact that under Obama, the black economy has suffered, which was the primary reason black people voted for him. They didn't vote for him because he was black. They voted for him because he was a Democrat and he was black. And he has not delivered. The primary reason, again, was the economy. Black unemployment is the labor force participation rate hasn't been this low since they've been keeping the number. The so-called wealth gap between a black family and a white family hasn't been this wide in 25 years. Black poverty up, black net worth down. It could go down the line. She has not delivered, so she's got to demonize Donald Trump, call him a bigot, and throw the police under the bus and argue that racism remains a major problem in America. It's disgusting. That's what you're going to do.
Let me run something by you. Maybe it's a little bit counterintuitive, but the message that Trump had, and part of his appeal, direct appeal to black families in this country is, what have you got to lose, right? Because of the performance of the left and all of their big government gambits. But what about doing it the other way? Think about this. Why am I making an appeal to you? What do I have to lose? It's baked into electoral math that 95% of African Americans are going to vote for the Democrat, that you're locked in, the majority, the overwhelming majority, you're locked into the Democrat Party. So why am I even making appeal? I mean, in other words, I have nothing to lose by making this appeal, and I have nothing to gain. There's nothing you can do to hurt me. What are you going to do? Not vote Republican? So maybe you should think that I'm coming to the table offering things like school choice and focusing on the lack of economic opportunities in the black community as compared to other demographic communities in our inner cities as compared to our suburban and rural areas. Maybe that's from a genuine place because I care, even if it doesn't benefit me politically.
I think that's exactly the pitch. I wish he had said something like that when he's been at some of these black churches. Again, when you look at the exit polling in 2008, 65% of Americans voted because they were concerned about the economy. The second concern was the Iraq War at 10%. Overwhelmingly, black people voted for Obama because they assumed he was going to improve the economy. And I ran down all these stats, and it has not worked. Furthermore, the welfare state has incentivized women to marry the government, allowed men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. 73% of black kids are born outside of wedlock. And if I were Donald Trump, I would say, I didn't say this, Obama said this. A kid raised without a dad is 5 times more likely to be poor, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in jail. And the welfare state has done more damage to the family than even slavery. Under slavery, even though marriage was illegal, a black kid was more likely than today to be born under a roof with his biological mother and biological father. And the Republican Party wants to give you choice so that you don't have to send your kid to an underperforming public school if you don't want to. The Democrats have married the teachers union and don't want to give you that kind of choice. So what do you have to lose? That's what I would say. Hey,
Larry Elder, host of the Larry Elder Show. That's who we're speaking with here. You host a radio show. You're used to taking callers, right?
Oh, sure.
You want to take a caller?
Let's do it.
I think we got somebody that's not on the same page. He is Michael from Naperville. Oh, did we just lose Larry Elder? Oh, dang it. Hold on a second, Michael. Let's try and get Larry Elder back, and we'll be right back.